Gives it up to Wembanyama.
Good D, Gobert. Oh, there's no way. 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 No. Cut it. Cut it. Cut it. Cut the fuck out. No way he dunked that. There's no way he just dunked that, bro.
It's time to talk about Victor Wembanyama. I haven't talked about the Spurs since preseason, and that video was mainly just my thoughts and predictions for the Spurs team as they move forward, with their new additions of Chris Paul, Harrison Barnes, and Stephon Castle being the most noteworthy. I felt that they would be a better team than they were last season, but obviously not close to the threshold of being actually able to contend yet. And it seems that they are using that to their advantage. Victor Wembanyama is getting a bunch of reps in already, and even though it is just his second season, and even though we're only halfway through it, he already looks like the best defender in the NBA, and he looks like a player that could be consensus top 10 in the league, possibly by the end of this season. And so what I said in the preseason video rings true. As soon as the Spurs are ready to contend, that's it. But we need to talk about what exactly Wemby has been doing this season, because I feel like talking about the Spurs as a whole, as they stand right now, is pretty pointless given that we know that this is not going to be the final roster. And at the end of the day, this is all just a stepping stone on the way to whatever the hell is about to happen. Wemby had really struggled to get it going throughout the first about 2 weeks of the regular season, which led to an anonymous NBA scout publishing this take that Victor Wembanyama is not impactful at all on offense. And to be fair, at the time, he kind of had a point, because in the games before this was published, Victor Wembanyama was averaging 17.7 points, 9.6 rebounds, 2.7 assists, and 3.7 blocks, which are all fine, but it was a noticeable drop off from the production that we had seen from him throughout the second half of his first NBA season. And combining those numbers with the fact that he was shooting 41% from the field and just 22% from three, you can kind of see where he was coming from. But at the end of the day, a lot of people didn't really take this too seriously, because a slump at the start of the season is pretty common, and he would show us that that's all that was. Because since then, Victor Wembanyama is averaging 30 points, 10 rebounds, 4.5 assists, 4 blocks, and he is shooting, this is the kicker, he's shooting 50% from the field as a big man, which you expect. He is shooting 39% from three on 11 attempts a game. And that's really not even all of it. If we look at his last 10 games, we see that he's putting up similar numbers all around, except for the fact that he is averaging, instead of 4 blocks or 3.9 blocks, in his last 10 games, Victor Wembanyama is averaging 5 blocks a game, which, by the way, is far and away the most in the league during this span, with Walker Kessler being the only player even close to him, and he is still at 2.7 blocks, which would be fantastic, and still is fantastic in any other circumstance. But when comparing it to the production of Victor Wembanyama, it's somehow not even close. He is over 2 blocks per game behind him. Now, the conversation surrounding Victor Wembanyama this season, especially offensively, has been largely focusing on his 3-point shots and his 3-point attempts. On the season, Wemby is averaging 9.5 threes a game, shooting 36% on those threes, which is a drastic improvement from the 32% that he was shooting last season on 5.5 attempts. And the big change for him this season has been the elimination of all of the lower quality off the dribble threes that he was taking last season. Of his 9.5 attempts, 7 of them are catch and shoot threes, which comes out to 36% of his shot diet being just catch and shoot 3-pointers, compared to last season when his catch and shoot threes accounted for just 18% of his shot diet. But this is also a factor of him just becoming a better catch and shoot player in general, because as opposed to last season when he was creating more shots on his own, he now has players around him that are able to get him these looks more reliably, of course in the form of Chris Paul, who is currently averaging 8.5 assists a game this season, with Victor receiving more than double the amount of passes as the next highest player on the team, which is Julian Champagnie. And a lot of these catch and shoot threes have been really open looks in transition. Now, he is taking a lot of threes that are way beyond the 3-point line, but if we actually look at his percentages on these attempts, he's shooting 34% from between 25 and 29 feet, so basically a normal range 3-pointer, and he is shooting 36% from 30 to 35 feet. What are we doing, man? What is going on? By the way, corner threes, 83% of them are assisted. Above the break threes, 86% are assisted. And the logo threes, 88% of them are assisted. Those are those shots that you see him taking in transition early in the shot clock, where he's just trailing the play, waiting for a pass. So when we look at it like that, I don't see any issue with him taking 10 threes a game if he is doing this on those attempts. But it is worth noting that he has still been self-creating here and there. It's just not nearly as big of a sample as it was last season. I was talking with a friend the other day and we were discussing, why is he taking so many? Obviously he's been incredibly efficient at them. Well, not incredibly, but he's been fairly efficient at them. And we pretty much came up with a theory that I think is honestly pretty scary to think about. Because this is Wemby's second season and they're really just using this as a development season, it is entirely possible that he is refining his three-point shot, as that was a pretty glaring weakness at times in his game in his rookie season. Even though he again had stretches of shooting really well from three, he was 32% on the season. And so it is entirely possible that he is just using this season as his own personal playground to determine what shots that he should actually be taking and just ironing out the kinks in those shots that he is selecting to take, so that when it is time eventually for San Antonio to start contending with him on the roster, his three-point attempts might go from 10 to say 6 or 7, and that way he's still taking enough to actually bend the defense and bring defenses out to him, but he is now adding those shots in addition to the already unstoppable game that he possesses inside the paint. And with a lower shot volume from three, you can guarantee that a lot of those shots are going to be higher quality than some of the shots that he's taking now, just because he is going to be picking those shots more carefully. That is very scary to think about. And that's just the offensive side of things. I haven't even talked about the defense. Obviously, last season finished second in Defensive Player of the Year voting, averaged 3.6 blocks. And this season, he's averaging 4 blocks per game on the season, as I said, and 5 blocks per game in the last 10 games that he's played. And it's honestly a lot of what we saw from him last season. Teams struggling to figure out how to score with him on the floor, players constantly being turned away just because he is standing in the paint, and just otherworldly shot contests and blocks that only he can make. But of course, rim protection is more than just blocks. Of players that have contested more than 100 shots at the rim this season, Victor Wembanyama is currently second in the league in opponent field goal percentage at the rim at 48.6%. The only player above him actually is Isaiah Stewart, who teams are shooting 45% against at the rim. And so that leaves me with the question once again, what is this dude's peak actually look like? If this is what we're seeing from him in his second season, what is he gonna look like at age 26? For context, Victor Wembanyama is 20 years old right now. I'm about to say something pretty terrifying. This is probably going to be the worst he's gonna be for a very long time. And so when we talk about the future of Victor Wembanyama and also the future of the Spurs as a whole, because they actually have a pretty bright future, I'm actually pretty curious to see what that looks like. I was pretty high on Stephon Castle coming into the season. He has looked fantastic, especially defensively. Offensive game has been a little inconsistent, but he's a rookie. That'll come along eventually, especially when you're playing alongside Chris Paul and you're being basically mentored by him. He is undoubtedly going to be the Spurs point guard of the future, and that's pretty much what they had been planning all along. So Victor as your rim protector, Stephon Castle likely going to be your main point of attack defender in the future, alongside a couple other really solid defensive pieces that the Spurs team has. Mainly Jeremy Sohan, who's looked great offensively and defensively this entire season. And so I'm pretty sure at this point that those three dudes in Wemby, Stephon Castle, and Jeremy Sohan are going to be their main defensive framework, for lack of a better word, in the future. Offensively, we still don't know what that's going to look like. A lot of the players on this team are probably not going to be around by the time this team actually starts competing. Harrison Barnes could very well be there. He has had a fantastic season, especially shooting 41% from three. Guys like Devin Vassell, Trey Jones very well could still be there. Of course, how can you know? The only thing that's really certain to me right now is just we're running out of time. Because once this dude actually gets a team around him that is good enough to be able to contend. But with all that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Subscribe if you're new. Hit the bell to be notified when I upload. Comment down below what you want to see next. And as always, I'll see you guys in the next one.